The prairie was quiet that evening, too quiet. The wind whispered through broken fences carrying stories of loss and silence. Eric, a lonely rancher hardened by 35 years of solitude, thought the day would end like all the others, until he saw them. Two children, hand in hand, dust on their boots, fear in their eyes. Their voices cracked as they spoke words that struck him harder than any storm. "Sir, it's our mama's last day alive. She said you might help." In that moment, the man who had nothing left to lose discovered he might have everything to save. Before we ride deeper into this story, if you're moved by tales of courage, love, and the quiet heroes of the Wild West, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more powerful stories just like this. And don't forget to share this video with someone who loves a good, heart-stirring Western tale. Now, saddle up. This is one journey you won't forget. The prairie had a way of swallowing sound. Out there, silence wasn't just the absence of noise, it was a companion, a heavy one that clung to Eric's shoulders day after day. His ranch stood like a weathered sentinel against the horizon, fences leaning, barn doors creaking, the dust carrying yesterday's stories. Eric was a man carved by solitude, 35 years old, yet his eyes looked older. He lived by the rhythm of the land. Wake at dawn, work until dusk, eat a quiet meal, then sit on the porch with no one to share the view. For him, that silence was safer than wanting, safer than needing. Or so he told himself. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. As the evening sun bled crimson into gold, he saw movement on the dirt path. Two small figures, hand in hand, trudging toward his gate. At first he thought maybe his tired eyes were playing tricks. Children had no business this far out, but the closer they came, the more real they became. Dust on their boots, faces pale with worry, eyes wide with something far heavier than childhood should carry. Eric rose from the porch, calloused hands gripping the railing. The girl, no older than 6, had dark hair tied back in clumsy strands. Beside her, a boy maybe 4, cheeks streaked with dried tears, clutching her dress like she was the last bit of safety in the world. They stopped in front of him, boots sinking in the dirt. The girl swallowed hard, and in a trembling voice she said words that froze the blood in his veins. "Sir, it's our mama's last day alive. She said you might help." The rancher's chest tightened. In his world of silence, words rarely had weight. But these struck like arrows, cutting deep where loneliness had built its walls. Eric knelt, his rough features softening as he looked into their eyes. What kind of mother, he wondered, sends her children out with words like that? A woman with nothing left to lose? Or one who loved so deeply she couldn't bear to let them face the world alone? Without another thought, he took their hands. The boy's grip was small, desperate. The girl's eyes, though scared, carried a strange hope. Eric led them inside, and with each step across the threshold, something shifted in him. In the back room lay Elena, their mother. 33 years old, but her frail body looked carved by years of hardship. Her face still carried a beauty sorrow couldn't erase, her eyes glimmering with quiet dignity, despite the shadow of death pressing near. Her breaths came shallow, lips parting like every word cost her a piece of her soul. She looked at Eric, and in that glance, more was spoken than words could ever carry. "Forgive me for burdening you," her gaze seemed to say. "But they are all I have." Eric had seen storms flatten fences, droughts crack the earth, winters that hollowed out even the strongest men. But nothing struck him like that look. He pulled a chair to her side. Words didn't come easy to him, but presence that he could give. Ava, the girl, clung to her mother's hand. Ian, the boy, pressed against Eric's leg, as though the stranger was already his protector. It unsettled Eric how quickly they folded him into their circle of need, as though fate had already decided where he belonged. The doctor arrived at dawn. His voice was flat, worn thin by too many endings. "She may not last the night," he said quietly. The sickness was strong, the wounds too deep. Eric nodded, jaw clenched, his silence holding back the tide of fear rising in him. But when the doctor left and the walls of the ranch grew heavy again, he couldn't escape the truth. He was no longer just a man with empty rooms. He was standing at the edge of something terrifying. Responsibility. And maybe, just maybe, love. That night, the ranch no longer echoed with emptiness. The sound of small feet on the floorboards, quiet whispers from the children's corner, the faintest laughter, it all seeped into the hollow spaces of Eric's life. For the first time in years, he felt the silence break. And though he didn't yet know what tomorrow would demand, one truth was already clear. His heart was no longer his alone. Days blurred into nights, nights back into days. The once lonely ranch now carried the sounds of life. Children's laughter echoing in the halls, the creak of beds shifting, the smell of simple meals warming the kitchen. Eric found himself teaching Ian to whittle, the boy's tiny hands fumbling yet determined. Ava tried to help with cooking, though her hands were clumsy and small. Elena, though weak, watched it all from her bed, her tired face brightened by faint smiles that spoke louder than words. For Eric, it was a strange new world, one he both feared and cherished. He hadn't asked for this, hadn't planned for it. Yet here it was, and he couldn't look away. But the prairie had its way of testing every soul. One evening, as the sun sank low, a shadow appeared at the edge of the property. Eric knew the man before he even spoke. The children's father, though father was too generous a word. He had abandoned Elena long ago, leaving her to carry scars and burdens alone. His voice carried mockery laced with disdain. "You think you can save her, rancher? You think you can be their protector?" Eric stood silent, hands clenched, fury simmering just beneath his calm. He wasn't a man who sought violence, but cruelty. He knew it when he saw it, and this man embodied nothing but cruelty. That night Elena wept, her body racked with fever. She whispered her fears to Eric. Fears of leaving her children alone in a world too cruel. Fears of their father returning to claim them. Eric sat at her side, his hand brushing hers, his heart breaking. For the first time in years he prayed, not for himself, but for her. That dawn would come, that her children would not face the world as orphans. The hours crawled. Shadows moved across the cabin walls like restless spirits. Elena's breaths grew weaker, each one sounding like it might be her last. Ava and Ian clung to her, their tiny bodies trembling, their cries muffled against her frail frame. And Eric, he couldn't stay silent anymore. Leaning close, voice raw with emotion, he let the words spill out, words he had buried too long. "I cannot lose you, Elena. You've become more than I ever thought I could deserve. I love you, not as a savior, not as a burden, but as the woman who taught me to feel again." His voice cracked, but his eyes held steady. Elena's tears fell, sliding down her pale cheeks. Her trembling hand found his. In a whisper softer than the wind, she answered, "I never thought I'd be loved again. Not like this. Not whole, not true. To be seen, not as broken, but as brave." Her tears weren't of sorrow, but of being loved when she thought love would never return. The night pressed on, cruel and endless. Yet against all odds, the dawn did come. Soft light spilled across the horizon, filling the room like hope itself. The doctor returned, astonished. Elena was still breathing, fragile yet alive. Not because of medicine, but because love had given her strength to hold on. Eric stood at the doorway, watching Ava and Ian run into the morning sun, their laughter ringing like a hymn across the land. He no longer felt the weight of emptiness. He felt the pulse of a family. A fragile one, yes, but real. The prairie stretched golden and endless before him. And for the first time it didn't feel empty. He had found his place. Not as a lonely rancher, but as a man who chose to love and was loved in return. And so the story of Eric, Elena, Ava, and Ian reminds us of something timeless. That even in the harshest landscapes, love can take root. It doesn't always come with thunder or grand gestures. It often arrives quietly in the persistence of kindness, in the courage to stay when it's easier to walk away. If this story touched your heart, don't write off just yet. Give this video a like to let us know. Subscribe if you want more heartfelt tales from the Wild West, where grit and tenderness walk side by side. And share this with someone who believes in second chances and love found against the odds. Until next time, keep your heart open and the trail ahead will never feel empty.